2 weeks of like 14 straight days of 14 hours a day just doing trauma therapy in group and individually. And, 2 weeks might not sound like a long time, but boy, that was about the most brutal, exhausting thing I'd ever done in my life. And then again, I had to do it for 3 weeks at a different facility. So again, 21 days of inpatient treatment, but also now really learning what the tools were to manage myself. How do I fix that behavior? How do I manage it? So it's sort of like you have an injury, you go to rehab, there's an acute healing phase, but then there's now you want to make sure you're strong and that you don't injure it again, because that injury took place because of some weakness. And that's not a perfect analogy, but the point is, there's a reason that your shoulder separated.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure it doesn't happen again, even once you're better. Truthfully, I don't think I had a choice. I don't think my marriage would have survived. So I think it was, I'm not sure I had a choice, truthfully. So I went very reluctantly. I did not want to go. It gave me my life. I mean, it literally saved my life.
Really?
For sure. Well, I just don't think I'd be alive today without it, right? I think had I lost, I was in such an awful cycle of shame and self-loathing and deterioration that I don't think I could have survived it. The voice is, you are an awful human being. That's why you behave this way. And there's nothing that can be done about it. You're born this way. You are defective. And this is what defective people do. Look, in many ways, it's a lack of accountability, right? It's sort of saying, you have no agency in this. You can't change this because you're defective. When they do an autopsy on you, they will see something in the temporal lobe of your brain that explains your pathology. And more than that, I was able to get rid of it. Yeah. I'll give you one very tangible example. I had a very, very vocal inner critic. And I think, I'm sure many people listening to us can relate to that, which is, I was such a perfectionist. I was such a workaholic. But any mistake I made, I would eviscerate myself verbally. So, and this is mistakes that don't matter. Okay, so one of my hobbies is archery. I love archery. So every day, almost every day, certainly if I'm not traveling, I'm going to be out in the backyard shooting my bow and arrow. Now, does anybody else care? Nobody, right? Does my livelihood depend on this? No. But if I'm not shooting well, I am screaming at myself. I will break an arrow over my thigh. And these are carbon arrows. They'll leave welts the size of your finger. One of the exercises we had to do was, and this was once I left the second therapy place that was 3 weeks. So one of the big realizations there was that this was happening, because that voice, I didn't realize that was unusual. So the exercise was, every single day until this voice goes away, which I thought would never happen, which meant I thought I was signing up to do this exercise for the rest of my life. You take out your phone and you talk into the phone with a replacement voice for that voice and pretend you're talking to your closest friend as if it were them who made the mistake. And I say, hey, Chris, I know you're having a bad day today. I can tell. It's hard. You're not shooting well. It's okay. You know what? Some days it's just not going to go well. Plus, it is a little windy today, let's be honest. That makes it a bit harder. And why don't we just pack it up and come back and try again tomorrow? Just talk in a kind way. Talk in the way you would literally speak to your friend. And then I would send that recording to my therapist. So every day my therapist is getting multiple versions of these voicemails. But this is important because I'm audibly doing this multiple times a day. And within about 4 months, the voice just went away.
Really?
Yeah. It's never come back. Right? As a father, as a husband, as a boss, as a friend. I mean, it's just, again, it makes me a little sad to think, oh God, I wish I knew this when I wish I did this at 25, instead of all of this. Again, I just think of all of the collateral damage in my life, all of the people near me who have suffered unnecessarily as a result of, of me being a wrecking ball, how much of that could have been prevented. In some ways, this kind of comes back to your very first question, right? Which is, I'm 30, I'm invincible. How do I get excited about this? Look, maybe the answer is, as a 30-year-old, you don't need to get excited about, your nutrition and exercise and your sleep as much as a 50-year-old does. But there's a lot of benefit to doing so because you'll get more benefit from it. But maybe it's just focusing on emotional health so that you get yourself fixed before you start a family. Because I think, and I think, I feel lucky. I think my kids are still young enough. I hope that my kids don't have too many memories of their dad in that state.